Hi everybody, this is Ras Landalose. It's a beautiful day outside in Canada. I'm going to just talk a little bit about heating today because I do my maintenance, and I figure I'll show you something real quickly. I don't like AC heaters, AC powered heaters running cards in my tank. So my heater is on now. I'm going to show what it looks like and how I've actually set this tank up. So from this side you can see the tank is on now, and I have basically my cabinetry goes right around the tank except in this little section where it's by the couch, and that's because I always want to have a visual indication of what's going on with my heater. Can you see the red light? That tells me when I'm walking around the house at night I can always take a quick glance because this glows under my tank, and I have a visual representation. Is my heater working? I use, let me show you a little bit. I'll try to get my phone underneath the tank. Where's the light? There it is. It's a nice bright LED light. I'll show you from the other side once I open it up. But that's one of the things that I use. This is very basic for most people. I like external inline heaters, and that's what this is for me. It keeps all the wires out of the tank and it heats my tank stably, and I have that quick visual, sort of discreet, that my heater is working, or at least in the on position. For very basic heat management, yep, and I'm transitioning from this. I've just sort of put this system together for basic reefers to show you how you can just sort of have a system that shows you what's going on in your tank heat wise, because that's going to be today's little topic in dealing with heating your tank. This is Ras Landalose. Give me a second to open up my tank and I'll show you some more.
My true friends know how we feel when we are fight with life like Holyfield. But I try me only shield, me I stay straight that, me I go and hold the seat. You can't make it if you believe. Enough of them are reef crap, but them never saw the seal.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Ras Landalose, and I'm back. I'm talking about temperature today. But let me turn down the music a little bit. I was just featuring a good friend of mine. His name is Vocal. There's a young youth in Jamaica where asked about a little bus. In English that means this is a young artist in Jamaica that's asking me to help him to promote his music. So every now and then young artists will send me the music, I listen to it, I feature it because that's now my backdrop music. So I'm going to turn it down and go right back into our series. Yeah, so today I say I'm going to talk a little bit more about temperature. Now I want to talk about temperature because, you know, I had a real revelation about thinking about how I dose my tank. And the name Landalose, most people don't probably understand. So let me introduce it a little bit differently. Landalose is my Zulu name, which means protector of all living things. And Ras is a title, it's an Ethiopian hierarchical title, like you would say prince or a noble person or a wise man. So my African name is Ras Landalose, in English interpreted princely protector of all living things. So today I'm talking about temperature, and I'm talking about temperature from my Rastafarian view. Now, when we think about dose in a tank, when we think about temperature, usually the two things don't go in the same sentence. But I challenge everybody who's listening to me today to ask, if you are a reefer and you live in Canada, that means you know that we have our temperature fluctuations through the year. If you have a reef tank, unless it is stabilized by a big heating system like in a commercial complex, I guarantee you you're knowingly having a heater in your tank. Heating tanks in the Northwest Territories is almost like a must. Now, because I am from Jamaica, marine systems there work a little bit differently. Heating isn't a big issue because of the ambient temperature in the air. But here in Canada, you better have a heater on your tank. Now, think about it this way. Any foreign object or any foreign element that you introduce to your tank on a regular or scheduled basis by a mechanical device, that's what I consider to be dosing. And we may think about dosing calcium and magnesium and alkalinity and buffer solutions, even phytoplanktons. We think about dosing in those sense, but how much of us consider temperature, or should I say heat waves, as dosing? You have to think about it as dosing, and here's why. If you don't think about it as dosing, then you will have violated one of the most important rules in reefing, and that is this: don't ever dose what you can't accurately measure. Now, most of us would have gotten, our heaters with a gauge on the top, and some heaters nowadays have a built-in reference gauge where you can actually see on the heater the temperature itself. But most startup hobbyists don't start with temperature gauges that are that sophisticated. Many out there on the market, like the Cobalt, digital, very high-end heaters, I really like those units. I don't use that one. I'm going to show you very soon my philosophy around heating. But the point I want to make about heating is that if you consider heat waves as an element we're dosing our tank, then we must have an accurate way to measure it. And you can't rely on what the manufacturer gives you. That's like me going into a court and say, Your Honor, only my testimony is valid because only I can speak for myself. Well, my views of me is me, but what everybody else thinks about me, especially on what I would call an established reference source. Most of you would know this, like if you have a refractometer, there is a calibration process that you should do. I'll talk about that a different time. But the question is here is, number one, your heater has a gauge within which to set your temperature, and you're trusting that. Some people go the extra step, baby step I call it, by just simply have a floating thermometer in your tank where you can just take a glance and look at your heat and say, yes, that looks about right. That's the very minimum that you should do. But I'm going to step it up a little bit. If you intend to keep corals, ladies and gentlemen, and I speak to myself this way too, is that as I am showing the development of my research and development marine tank, it's how you transition a freshwater tank through the stages of marine with very little interference to your fish. I'm going to come to a particular stage in this whole test that I'm going to be forced to take my fish out. I don't want to do it, but I can't figure another way to do the upgrades I'm doing. Anyway, back to temperature. So we're dosing temperature into our tanks, but are we accurately measuring it? The only way to accurately measure it is with an independent gauge. Now, this is the very basic. I recommend, if you have corals, to use a digital probe. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about digital probes and controllers. But before I forget, because I just might, because I'm going to have to take another draw. 1 second, please. Yes, so back to this now. We're going to deal with dosing and monitoring and testing our equipment very seriously. And here's why. All the research I have done and all the reefers I have encountered, let's say I've spoken to 100 reefers. New reefers coming into the business for the first time, coming into the industry for the first time. 100 new reefers. And by year 2 to year 3 is where you have the highest failure rate of new reefers coming into this into this hobby. Many of them have their what we would call a tank crash around year 2 and year 3. And if you ask 100 reefers what was the cause of your tank crash, I guarantee you more than half of them are going to point to one failure point on a tank that people don't take seriously enough, including myself originally, which was temperature. If your temperature, your heater does not work, ladies and gentlemen, in other words, fails, yes, every heater has a warranty period. Do you know the warranty period of your heater? And worst case scenario, do you have recorded somewhere the day and year, and if you're like me, the time that you put your heater in your tank for the first time and left it on? Because how else are you going to count the time to which the warranty expires? Take the manufacturer's warranty very seriously, ladies and gentlemen. I'm talking to you from experience. Listen to my experience. This tank has already crashed on me. And fortunately for me, because I am Rasta, I also involve my children in my hobby. So we went to the pet store and all of us picked out a fish, and each fish was supposed to represent a family member. So we put 5 fish into the tank, each representing one of my children and myself. So quarterly, I'm getting back to temperature, this is all tied in. Quarterly I do what I call my full maintenance pull down. My full maintenance pull down, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm taking out every plumbing, I'm pulling down all of my pumps, I'm taking off all of my O-rings, and I am putting on silicone. I'm getting my toothbrush, I'm going into every corner, I'm flushing my lines with hot water, I'm even taking out the heater, soaking the element with vinegar to make sure there's no calcification build up. I mean a complete pull down. I try to do this once a quarter. Well, about 6 months ago, after I had done my full cleanup, put the system back together, I inadvertently, while reconnecting the heater, remember my hand slightly brushing against the control knob. It was such a light brush, my mind said ignore it. And I did. Put the system back together, lock up the cabinet, and walked off. But then smoked some weed, and something in the back of my brain said, you know what? Go check the temperature sensor. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you what you saw underneath my tank. That was in the day, it's dark. So instead of being smart and taking a flashlight and looking, you know what I did? Yes, even I have to laugh at myself because you know where the story is going. I opened the cabinet, looked and like, looks about right. Looks about right. Anyway, shortly thereafter, here was the first warning sign. And ladies and gentlemen, this is from my experience. If you don't know this, please pay attention to your tanks. Spend some time with your tanks, spend some time with your animals. Just watch them and observe them. Because if you don't have a digital control system like the Apex, you and your family members are going to be your human Apex. Which means you ought to start to learn the behaviors and swimming patterns of all the fish in your tank. Because I burn ganja at night and watch my fish all day long, I've come to realize certain fish habits, like my fox face. About 2 hours in after cleaning my tank, that particular time of day when he's hiding, he was out. And not only was he out, he was swimming around and dancing around in the tank. So I'm walking by, I'm like, whoa, I haven't seen you do that before. And I'm watching and I'm thinking, oh, that's cool. And I walk off. That was warning sign number 1, and I totally ignored it. About another hour and a half later, it's getting down to the evening hours where he's always hiding. Because my lights change, he changes colors, he goes into the rock somewhere and hides. What the? Still out. You see him up and down like that now? See, wait a second. Okay, just had to check. He was behaving like that, and he was behaving like that at night. And I like, now this is odd. Blink, blink, blink. Ladies and gentlemen, I ignored it and like, you know what I thought to myself? he must have liked how I cleaned up the tank. And that he's feeling so happy, and this is him telling me he's happy because I cleaned up the tank. Damn idiot. No, that's not what he's telling you, Russ. So I go to bed, rush out through the door, the kids, everybody. So I come back home. Yes, I still want to cry, so give me one last drop, please, before I tell you the rest of the story. Yeah, so the rest of the story is this now. So the camera is set up by the door, so you're probably hearing the birds chirping outside. So I come home, and as I come through this door where the camera is sitting, so I'm looking this way to the tank, my daughter runs up and she says to me, "Daddy, you're dead." So, alright, I freeze and I'm like, well, what the did I do? No, my brain is clicking and clicking and clicking, and I can't understand because I didn't beat her. The body was grounded, and I'm like totally perplexed because I refuse to think about the obvious. Then she says, "No, Daddy, look," and she points to the tank. No, at that moment, you don't want to be me because you know exactly what she's telling you. And you know now the progression of the, I'm sorry, I hope no kids are listening, but the fuck up. You felt your hand brush that temperature knob. Well, ladies and gentlemen, surely enough, my prized angelfish was dead. My corals already had started to bleach. I'm now down to 2 of my 5 fish. Fortunately, I think I have saved my green star polyp. It's on the mend. My clownfish and my foxface survived the tank crash because of temperature. Now, that's a user error of how one of 2 things will happen to you at some point in time with your heater. It's a mechanical device, ladies and gentlemen. Most of us are using some of those standard glass tube heaters. I don't care what kind it is, but most of them operate off of a relay that has a contact point. And when there is current, the 2 contact points come together and touch. When the current changes because of the temperature, the thermostat in the heater, it opens and closes several times over the year, and over time those contact points, when the current touches them, can fuse together. And when the temperature sensor says release, they're bonded and can't release because it's metal. That's the worst failure you can have on your heater. And here's why. That heater has now failed in the on position. That means even when the thermostat is telling it turn off, it can't. And so if you keep your tank temperature like at that high point, like at the 80, some reefers keep them at the 81, like you're on that brink, you can't even afford a fluctuation of 0.1. So when your heater fails on you in the on position, here's what happens in your tank. Physically, we can't see that 4-degree rise. But here's what's happening in the water column. The hotter the water gets, the lower the oxygen content in the water. Because hot water or water coming close to boiling holds less oxygen in there. Cooler water can hold more oxygen. That's why if the heater fails in the off position and the temperature drops an equivalent 4 degrees, you might come home in time to save the tank. That's if you noticed. Because that can be a number of days, depending if it's winter or what. before you start to see signs of your corals or your fish. But then you put them under severe stress. So my philosophy on heating, ladies and gentlemen, is that this is a cornerstone of a tank. This is a marine tank. We have corals in here, many of us mixed corals that come from different places around the world, different temperatures in the tank. But stability of a temperature zone is important, because there is a point where you will kill your corals in a matter of hours. So one, we have to have a system of making sure that the heating element is working. So if you don't know how long your heater has been in your tank, I suggest right now you stop this video and run out to your nearest pet store or go online and buy a heater and get it in your house right away as a matter of urgency. That's the most important advice I could give to any reefer right now. Size your heater properly. I use 5 watts to every gallon. But in this tank, I'm running an experiment where I'm heating at around, I think it's between 70 and 80% capacity of that heater. And it's keeping it stable, because I am fearful, yes, of that failing on scenario. So if my heater does fail in on position, I don't want it to be able to hit that upper extreme for an extended period of time before I catch it. So I've been making some significant investments in an upgrade, so I can literally document and show you the steps how I am actually rebuilding this tank. So yes, that's get a redundant heater. With a redundant heater, I have come across what I would say is a very interesting discovery. I'm looking at my screen because I actually was just reading one of the reviews on the Exoterra thermostat. They have them in 100, 300, but I'm particularly interested in the 600 watt. It's a very this thermostat, ladies and gentlemen, is designed for the reptile industry. If you know much about the reptile industry, when you have a reptile, a snake or a lizard that comes from desert regions, you have to have a very specific and very precise, I should say, temperature control environment with humidity for those reptiles. So they have sensors and thermostats that are built for that type of control and precision. That type of thermostat is going to be way better than this. It's going to be way better than some of your standard digital probes you drop in the water that you paid $10 or $15 for. These are your pets. We have invested a lot in our pets. Yet the least of our investment has come from our heaters. And I speak to myself because I feel so convicted when those deaths happen, because I know it could have been avoided. It was slackness on my part. And I know that there are many of us who have never really given this type of depth of thought to our heaters. But yes, rethink that we are dosing heat waves to this tank, and we're doing it recklessly and carelessly because nobody's monitoring it. We're trusting a decaying piece of equipment that we don't even know how old it is anymore. And all of the life in this tank is riding on that key parameter being stable, because that key parameter can kill your tank, crush your tank in a matter of hours. Nitrates, nitrites, it's going to be your heater. I promise you. Do the research, Google it, check it if you don't believe me. It's your heater. So why I like the Exoterra thermostat is that here is an interesting use, and I have not tested it yet. I'm about to test it, and do your own research. I am going to recommend based on the reviews I've read. I am going to use that to monitor the temperature of my tank water, because the probe is waterproof, and the manufacturer on their website says this, that is also ideal for aquatic environments. It's on their website, ladies and gentlemen. Get your backup heater. Plug it into the 600 watt Exoterra. It can set your daytime temperature and your nighttime temperature individually. You can set it very precisely and it remains the same however you want to manage your reef. I am Rasta. I grew up in Jamaica, so my reef going swing. I am going to have temperature fluctuations in my tank because I also change my flow at night. That's how I am recreating nature in my own tank, also with my heater. So I do fluctuate my temperature day and night in my tank. Because for me, it's like exercise. There are corals that I'm going to be putting in here that I want to be able to give each of them a little of what they need. Because these corals come from different environments, as I said earlier. Some from the more coastal Caribbean areas and some from really deep waters. Different temperature zones. So in fluctuating in a safe zone for the corals in there through a controller like that, it's a brilliant idea and a safe zone for you because it will give you an alarm. It's digital, you can see it versus, is it in the blue? Am I reading this correctly? I'm suggesting who wants to join me and try that. I'm getting one tomorrow. Exoterra, and oh, by the way, I get nothing out of these things. I'm just telling you my opinions from my little research. So I'm going to get my backup heater. I'm going to size it about 70% of my tank. So using the 5 watts per gallon rule, if I have a 50 gallon tank, that's a 250 watt heater. Take 70% of 250 watt, that's the heater I would install on this. And I would also have a second one, the exact same size, from the exact same manufacturer, bought at the exact same time as the redundant one. And I would use that controller to go in between them. I'll show you that setup later. But get that one and get 2 heaters of the same size. If your heater is unknown to you, get rid of it today. Use that formula I'm suggesting. Get 2 of them tomorrow. And I'll talk to you a little bit more how to set it up properly to keep your animals and your pets safe. So, that's a long talk. I did not expect to say so much. I am going to give you a quick peep at the one I'm running. I think it's a high door. Yes, it is. I'll show you real quickly how simple it is on a canister and how it works for me. And my redundant heater is going to be one exactly like that. That's going to be inline. This is Raslan Dalose.
My true friends know how we feel when we are fight with life like Holyfield.
And I'm back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Raslan Dalose. I didn't expect that this was going to be more than a 3-minute video. I guess I have a lot more to share about temperature than I thought. So, I big up again to vocal in a Jamaica, one of my young soldier them that trying to trot the way and do conscious things in life in the music industry. So a big shout out to him. I know him as George. Big up yourself, vocal. And you that a bust some tune pan Raslan Dalose video. So, temperature now. The dosing again, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there's another way to do it. I recommend, based on reviews, the Exoterra 600 watt thermostat. From everything I've seen, that's what I'm going to invest in next. And I'm going to run that on one of my new heaters. And I'll show you that setup another time. Now, if you don't go the thermostat route, then at least you have to have a secondary source of validating whatever is giving you your temperature readings. Now, the only other way you can do that would satisfy a reefer like me is if you're going to get a calibration style temperature probe. It's usually a very long instrument, but it is scientifically designed to give you very accurate and precise temperature readings. Invest in that if you want. I certainly am, because that's going to be my calibration standard for all temperature sensors. Get a scientific calibration grade temperature probe. That is the holy grail of calibrating any form of system that is measuring and dosing temperature. So Yes, the thermostat is good, and that's the first step to help control and protect your tank. But you also have to have the independent way of validating accuracy. Okay, so now I'm just going to give you a quick peek of what my under ears look like. Sometimes it surprises me. And what I should tell you is, no, I won't tell you. I'll just show you. So I'm going to move the phone. I'm going to move a few of these things. Let me just get my plants and my bird out of the way, and then I'll bring the camera a little closer. Alright, decided that I would do this while I was filming, not before. Thanks, weed. Okay, so just give me a second. I'm going to move out the plants. And give myself back a little music from vocal while I'm doing this, so just play over the song then.
Me I tell them the story real. How many nights without a meal? Me true friends know how we feel when we are fight with life like holy field. But I try me own the shield, me I stay.
No, I go through all of this because I like to have my pets blended in my house. So you'll see my tank and my bird is in the middle of my house. It's literally in the middle of the living room. So I put my plants and everything around them. That's just part out of my Rasta field. Bird. Yes, there's a couple of steps I go through when I get into the underside of my tank. But I don't mind, because everything is relatively easy to move. And now that my Senegal is out the way, I can open up my cabinet. Now you'll see something interesting about how I do my cabinetry. It's all magnets. So the board has these recessed magnets. My base is a metal stand. So there's literally no moving metal hardware parts. Just a pull off and I have a complete access to underneath. This is one of the designs of cabinetry that I have found that I absolutely love. There's no other cabinet system other than those recessed magnets for hiding all that's underneath your tank that works better in comparison. None. So I've just shown you one of my styles in how I do cabinetry. And I'll tell you where you can get it at a different time. Okay, so I'm going to bring you closer so you can see underneath my tank, and I'm sure you're going to laugh. But just remember the quality of the water that this system has been generating for months now. Coming. Alright. Here's what underneath my tank looks like. This is what I'm running for heat. And this is how I run it. One canister filter. Inline canister filter. And just runs up. Yes, this was glass. I also experimented at one point with covering the top of my tank. I've removed it because I don't like the lights. The breaking of the UV rays coming through just doesn't work with light. Glass just takes it all out. So I've removed this. Once I actually introduced corals to my tank, I had to take off the glass tops, as this worked with the fresh water to reduce evaporation significantly, and it was great while this was being run as a freshwater tank. But once you go into marine, you have to remove your lids. Best to have open top. Maybe if you have jumping fish, you'll have a mesh top. But yes, that's what you want to do. Remove your covers. This brand of salt is Salinity. Now, not much people talk about this salt, and I'm gonna talk a lot about this salt in one of my other little videos. The last one I showed you a different salt, which was Instant Ocean. So there are a couple different salts I've tried and will continue to try in my tank to see which one gives me the best results. One thing I did like about Salinity is this chart that they give you, where you literally for each batch, literally bucket of salt, it tells you exactly what's in it. Not a batch test, but a bucket test. So I can see literally what were the specifications. My calcium, my alkaline, my magnesium, everything is literally printed out on this bucket. So I really love Salinity for that one. I think this is a Seachem brand. But we'll talk about the salt next time. This is my hood holder. I'll show you how that works another day when I do one on light. But yeah, that's it. And a very simple thing. Running canister filters just have a couple ways of backing up for potential leaks. I just created a little bag here, waterproof bag, where if there is, for instance, any leak, that it will be contained in this section, and literally before it overflows, because it can't. I also built in I'm showing so much today. Also built in air brake in the line. The air brake is somewhere up here, where I literally just punctured a hole in the line, so when the water dropped, it would basically break the siphon and not continue to overflow through the pipe, and ensure that this space here was more than significant to hold the volume of water that came from there. But also at the base of the tank, reseal it with fresh silicone, so if there was even any spill over, it would not seep into my carpet. So I do have a secondary base, and inside this section does hold a significant amount of water as well. So again, when I'm going to show you some developments underneath this tank. A lot is going to change and move around, but this is where I've been experimenting with all different kinds of systems. I've run 2 of these guys simultaneously. I'm now running one and seeing the clarity and how I'm able to manage it with just one. So I move back and forth between them. I'm going to show a few more systems with how I'm now going to build what I call, I guess I've mentioned it for the first time, the Blue Lagoon. Underneath here will be my whole new filtration system, which I believe will significantly impact the marine industry. Just how to really filter your tank without a sump, and do so in a very natural way. So ladies and gentlemen, just cut it short. This is Rashland Alozi. Thanks again for watching me on temperature, and hopefully I'll talk to you again soon.